Unturned is presented by UpdateAI.
Originally, it was about make customers happy. Then it was about like get licenses utilized. Then it was about driving adoption. And I think where we're at really is, all of that's great and you need that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately you want to get to what are the outcomes that you're driving, right? Or what are the business outcomes that you're driving for that customer?
We need CSMs for our CSMs to be able to like look at the whole journey and to say, yeah, you guys are using these 10 tools. You're probably not using them right. Right. So we'll give you the point solution of training, but also like I've been really enjoying this idea of dog fooding where we're actually using the software ourselves more and more and more. We're actually building more tools for ourselves to make ourselves better and not just selling something that is going to make our customers' life better. It is me, Jon Johnson. Both Josh and Christy are out of office today or doing something. Christy's teaching a webinar. Josh is just being Josh in New York, probably eating a bagel somewhere. But I'm so excited for today's episode. I am Jon Johnson from User Testing and Unturned here on this podcast. I've got a couple cool guests with me today and a guest host. You may remember him from one of our past episodes. We have Michael Forney joining us. I'd love just to say what's up, buddy.
How's it going? It's good to be back. Appreciate the re-invite. And yes, I am today's Josh imposter. So I was going to do my best to impersonate him, but he advised me against that. So I guess I'll just be me today. I'm Michael. I am the VP of Customer Success at a company called Responsive, which helps to semi-automate and streamline the RFP response process, helping companies unlock their corporate and organizational knowledge. So it is a wild and fun ride at that company. That's one of the things that brought me actually to this podcast was just navigating all of the situations that we do in a high growth SaaS business. So,
is anybody high growth these days? Let's be honest. Like, ideally high growth.
Yes. I mean, it feels like breakneck speed pretty much at all times. And every 6 months, it just gets faster and faster. I keep asking my colleagues, like, when is this going to slow down? And they're like,
it just gets differently quick. Well, we also have somebody that I'm excited to have this conversation with. We have Sam Loveland from Salesloft. I'd love, Sam, for you to kind of jump in and give a quick little intro on who you are and what your role and what you're focusing on at Salesloft is today.
Sure. So thank you for having me. I'm Sam Loveland, the Chief Customer Officer at Salesloft. I will be there almost a year. Come July, it will be 1 year. And my responsibility is everything post-sale. So inclusive of customer success and renewals, professional services, support, and customer and partner education. So that's all under my remit. It's about 300 folks globally that we have. And, what is Salesloft or who is Salesloft? So we are a revenue orchestration platform, meaning we help sellers be more effective and efficient in how they go to market and how they sell, by making sure we understand where the buyer is in their journey and meeting them in that moment. And so that's really important for us. And so, of course, we're on the AI journey like many other software as a service companies. So looking forward to that discussion. We were early on, I'd say. We really came out with our first AI-led effort, back last year. In June of last year, we launched Rhythm, which allowed us to really take in signals from partners, from your own internal data to be able to help prioritize the work so the sellers can, actually be in front of customers instead of migrating back, going back and forth swivel chairing. And so thank you for having me. And I've been in the post-sales space for many years. I don't want to say the number of years, but, I started out back in the early days of Salesforce. And, when, first customer success was coming about, did journeys with Yammer and Microsoft. And then before Salesloft was 4.5 years at ServiceNow. So very familiar with the tech space and especially in the post-sales customer facing parts of the organizations.
Well, you said Yammer, and I feel like my eye twitched just a little bit. I remember my first startup, we had Yammer, and we were switching over to Slack. I think.
That was a precursor, right? Yammer was really the precursor to Slack and, and the collaboration platforms that exist today.
Yeah, and I have like a very visceral memory of like getting Slack for the first time and feeling like somebody had just handed me a puppy, and it just it gave me everything that I needed, right? And then you get down to the nuts and bolts, and obviously there's gaps, but like that. It was so, what was that? It was in Voca in Santa Barbara, California. Not that you remember this or anything, but gosh, Yammer, that was a flashback. Man, maybe we should talk about all of the companies that we used to work for that maybe don't exist anymore or exist in very different ways. Is Yammer still?
Actually,
Yammer is part of Microsoft. So Yammer,
Okay.
Microsoft, that was the last Steve Ballmer acquisition that he did in that summer of
Good old
2012.
Ballmer.
And then we became part of Microsoft. So it is still part of Microsoft's 365 package. It's still part of SharePoint. And it does exist. But yeah, that was an acquisition that was done.
Man, that is so wild. I'm loving this. This is like what, so I will say, Sam, that I am very pro talking about how long I have been in this industry. Not because it ages me, but because I feel like there is like a little bit of sentimentality. Like when you go back to like customer success in 2008 or 2007, when we were like still really having that argument about are we support or not?
right.
Like not what's happening today, but like the real
It's very
misunderstanding.
reactive, right? You know, that was the genesis, at least back in the Salesforce days, that was the genesis of customer success, was really, call it a red account team, very reactive, handling escalations coming from customers, but with like a very white gloved approach, because it wasn't always, bug fixes or technical issues. It was more around people and adoption and process changes that we had to bring customers along, which is a very different experience. And that's really kind of the genesis that I saw of customer success. You had account managers, but not really customer success. And so, that kind of took off. But yes, you're right about, I joined in 2005, but on the professional services side, when I first joined, and then in 2006 made the switch over into customer success.
That's amazing. Okay, so I
did age myself just now.
No, it's fine. This will be a little bit of a left turn from what we're going to talk about, but I do want to ask you some questions because, well, I love this background, and I'm really glad that you have you've seen every permutation, not just like startups, but also with Salesforce and Microsoft and some of these kind of bigger names that kind of figure things out in a better way than they have more resources, more people, more opportunity. What you just said as defining what customer success is, I feel like over the last 15 years or so, we have gone down this very winding path of what is the role of customer success? What is a CSM's job? What is the role of a CCO even, right? And I'm feeling like we are coming back to what you just said, at least in some aspects. I know that there's always going to be outliers. But I would love to hear, even if you just kind of like just some gleamings or your thoughts on where we're at as an industry, and if you think maybe we're moving in the right direction, or maybe we're still kind of fighting for an identity with somebody who has kind of carried this identity for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always going to be finding an identity, to be honest, right? And the way I think about it is, customer success will continue to evolve. And I think this is a great topic into AI, right?
Yeah.
Which is, there is always the human element of it. And I don't think that goes away, right? For your largest and your most strategic accounts, like you are going to need that, because a lot of it is about relationships, right? It's about building that trust with the person on the opposite end, helping them understand the value and ultimately what you're trying to drive towards. And this is the evolution that I have seen on customer success is, originally, it was about make customers happy. Then it was about like get licenses utilized. Then it was about driving adoption. And I think where we're at really is, all of that's great and you need that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately you want to get to what are the outcomes that you're driving, right? Or what are the business outcomes that you're driving for that customer? And that those business outcomes vary depending on what product it is that you're implementing. In the case of Salesloft, it's about, building bigger pipeline, better win rates, building bigger opportunities, close rates, so on and so forth, right? But that's ultimately the role of customer success and what we're trying to drive towards. Now, at the top end, I don't believe the human part will go away. Now,
Mm-mm.
AI will help support, the CSMs, how they prioritize their work, who do they focus on. You can have AI feed those information. You can have AI help summarize calls, help you create emails better or more pointed emails, but the human's still there. On the tail end, right, of your customers, because you can't keep adding resources, is where, I think there's a lot of opportunity, that we've started our journey on, the AI path for how do we leverage more tech touch capabilities. And when people hear tech touch, they often think about marketing campaigns, right? And it's more than that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Marketing campaigns are great and, they're important, but like, how do you augment that with real technology capabilities so that, you have, I don't like using the word, but like you have a co-pilot as a,
Yeah.
like when you're a, customer logging in and using that product, whatever that product is, you want somebody to sit by them to help them when they're, not as a sales help, but help them like, hey, how do I use this feature better, within that product? And that's how like the co-pilot will help the CSM out because they're not having to spend time talking about feature functionality. We want to like really elevate more the conversation around the strategic capabilities and what's the process, what's the change management, like what's the center of excellence governance model, like broader strategic thinking versus like tactically go click this button if you need to turn that feature on, right? And moving away from that.
Yeah. I think I totally agree with everything that you're saying, Sam. And I think that the role of the human, at least as far as we can tell, it will still be
Yeah.
needed. Although, I don't know, I'm not completely closing the door on our robot overlords taking over completely. I mean, they can do some pretty amazing things
Yeah.
today
Yeah.
that I would never have said that by now they'd be able to do. So anything is still possible.
Anything's still possible. I think, where, it goes back to that trust, that relationship, right? Like that is the part that, I
Yeah,
don't know if a robot or, a purely
completely,
tech solution will be able to solve. But I
completely.
agree. There's like more and more opportunity. And the way we look at it is what are those everyday things, that you do day in and day out that we can offload, right? That like you can train a, LLM to, to be able to go do and be able to provide you that. Right. And so,
Mhm.
or things that we don't like to do. Right. And typing up those emails. Yes, they're valuable. They're extremely valuable. But if they're summarizing an email that's going back to a customer based on a recording that you just did, and you have your next steps and actions, like that could all be automated. Right. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's valuable. It can all be automated, but me spending the next 20 minutes typing up that email and going back through my notes is not really a value added activity. If you could
Totally.
take off 80% of that and just spend 2 minutes cleaning it up and sending it out, how much more productive. And now I could go work on the next customer or whatever the next, key activity is that I have to go do.
Totally.
That's
Now,
good.
a lot of what we've been talking about with AI, and I think a lot of what's the chatter is in the marketplace is very operator level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Emails, call summaries, very very tactical things. It's like I need to get 15 minutes back. What about when I think about AI, I'm trying to think about it in terms of what like the CSMs or what the support team members
Yeah.
on my department can what they can get out of it. But I'm also really trying to think about it in ways of like how can it help me with my like data analysis and pattern identification between who's churning and who's renewing and why is
Yeah.
that and all of that. So how do you think like when you think about your board decks and like the presentations you need to share with your
Yeah.
boss and internally to find those
It's those
nuggets of
insights.
insights, yeah,
Yeah. It's the insights,
how are
right? That
you
yeah. I
yeah, how
mean,
are you using
there's
AI for that, if at all?
So I think we're still early on in the journey on that. And, we have analysis that that insights that we're getting from, generative AI in terms of looking at our overall customer base. Where are they from a health segmentation perspective? How is that improving over time and helping us be clearer about like where we need to focus and what we need to do. And, that both at a tactical, CSM level, but also, up to the board, right? Up to, the C level executives, up to the board of what are the changes, what are the insights that we're gaining. and to be able to do that, right? And you can also even extrapolate those insights into product enhancements, right? Like if you are, the way you could do that is if on, you do your call recordings and you listen to the call recordings, or not listen, but like the AI is looking at the call recordings, they can extrapolate and say, hey, by the way, this insight, this is an area that customers are asking for, or these are features they're asking for that's not available. How does that feed into the product engine, right? Into the product engineering side of the house. So I think what you're homing in is on what are the insights that you want to glean from, and how do you take action, both as a leader, in an organization, but also as an individual in terms of completing your task at a more operational level.
Totally. And I've spoken on this podcast before about the importance of cross-functional collaboration in order to truly achieve, remarkable customer success metrics like retention and renewal rates. And I think it's only possible when you have the whole machine all working together: product, sales, marketing, finance, legal, etc. Everybody is, they know what their piece is, but you have to create a system that will float those pieces to the top so that you can give it to, hey, our messaging around this product is clearly not working. Hey, I need marketing to help jump in here, or there's all this product feedback in this one particular area, so product needs to know about that. Yeah, we're still very much in the early days of that as well, still trying to figure out how all of that works. And I'm getting demos from like as many AI companies as
There,
possible.
like every day, there is so many like new,
Yeah.
vendors or new AI vendors that pop up. It's hard to keep up, right? And some fantastic work that's out there.
And that actually brings me to like the meat of what I wanted to talk about today. So we're all talking about AI. Obviously, we're all looking for solutions. Michael, you pointed something out very intelligent, I think, is right now it's very much on the operator level. Like it's like a CSM that utilizing a tool. We talk about UpdateAI because they pay for this podcast that helps with like follow-ups and call recordings. And it's a great tool. It's fantastic. Right. However, I actually am seeing something similar, Michael, where every day there's a new AI tool. There's a new niche. There's a new, like, it's just, we just plug this in here and plug that in there and then give it all of our data, right? And to what you said, Sam, earlier, there is this thing where as CSMs, our heart should be built around how are we helping our customers' governance with our tool. We're not actually doing that on the back end, right? I mean, I feel like what we're seeing right now is this rush to AI of like AI consumption, right? I would say, where everybody's looking for that one little thing that will help them speed up that email or that marketing, but nobody within our organization is managing an LLM that runs and supports our internal teams. And that's where I get really, really tired of every single marketing deck that is just like, we're powered by AI. And it's like, okay, you've got a decision engine. Great, good for you. But like, how are we building an ecosystem? So Sam, to your point, what you power is the front end revenue of organizations that use your tool. So as you're looking through AI as a solution, not just widgets for analysis or whatever it is, but to provide that, how are you thinking about it from a revenue standpoint so that your CSMs are guiding your customers not away from the value of your tool, but back into how like this AI future is going to live?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's kind of two parts to the answer when I think about it, right? Like one, there's the product Salesloft itself, right? And how we're powering, empowering the salespeople, through our own generative AI releases, right? So we pull in signals. And when I talk about signals, right, we can very easily integrate with pretty much any partner platform that's out there. Mm-hmm. We have some standard offerings that are out there, but the benefit of what that does is we can take those signals in and help prioritize what you should be working on next based on the insights that we're gleaning, right? And what I mean by insights is to say, hey, you have an opportunity that's coming up in a month. By the way, this customer has just downloaded, this white paper and you have HighSpot or Seismic or whatever it is. By the way, you should reach out to them because you're now meeting the buyer in the moment that they're really interested in, finding about your product. By the way, you should reach out because this is a deal that you've now committed into your forecast and it's all tied together, right? So that's about taking those signals, creating those insights, providing the information to the why, to the seller to say, why should I act upon it? Well, it's giving you the trusted data, right? Like the sources of data, because you want your sellers to trust the data to be able to act on it. So that's like from a product perspective, what we're doing and the insights that we're giving to like help those practitioners be more successful and therefore close more deals and close more wins. From a CSM perspective, and what we're doing is we're also feeding them insights, but slightly different insights, right? And what I mean by that is based on the totality of, let's call it an account, and based on the activity level within the account, or they've engaged, by the way, your chief revenue officer that you were like your key stakeholder just left the organization. And so you should go now reach out to where they've gone, but also reach out to to your, customer and find out, well, who's replaced them, understand, who those changes are, right? So those are like the insights that we're feeding to the individual practitioner to make them successful. The journey that we're on from a CS perspective, though, and it kind of goes back to your question, Michael, is how do we take like the broader set of data that's available out there and glean the right insights, that's happening, right? And what I mean by that is, as when we looked at our customer, like any one customer, we saw 18 different touch points for a single customer, right? But it's probably not unusual. I know that number sounds loud, but it's probably not unusual to any company, right? You've got your account executive, you've got your solution consultant or services and, or sales engineer, depending on the term. You've got your executive sponsor, you've got everybody in post sales, right? From your services, customer success, customer support. You start adding it on, you can easily get to about 18, but everybody's working in different tools and systems. Yes, we all say we want to be integrated, but they're all in different tools and systems. They're all, some of it is in a shared drive. Some of it's in email, some of it's in, unstructured data that I just talked about. Some of it's in structured data. So how do you glean all of that information to be able to then provide that insight into that account and what you should be doing next? And so those are the things that we're looking at, is like, how hard is it? Like whenever I'm getting ready for a QBR, like I immediately go to the salesperson and say, give me a, executive briefing deck of what's happened before, all of that, amount of time they have to do to pull that together. What if you could just ask AI that question and it goes to all the sources of information and automatically just pulls that together for you, through whatever data sources there are, right? Like that's the type, and then share some insights, right? Like,
right.
Oh, here's like a key change that's happened, and therefore you need to go talk about it.
Yeah. I'm going to say something probably drastic, but wouldn't it just be easier if we all use the same tool?
It would be.
Like, every time we talk about this, and we're going through this right now with our company at User Testing, and sales uses a different tool. We use a different, CSP, our solution consultant uses a different time tracker, and there's Quip, and there's like 10 different tools, and it all is built on top of Salesforce, and everything comes out of Salesforce, and everything gets sent back into Salesforce. And it's like, guys, we're paying for like 10 tools here, and they all read off of Salesforce. Why don't we just use Salesforce? Then you use Salesforce, and you're like, oh my God, I need all of these other things.
Exactly.
And we've just built.
It's not a workflow engine, right? Like it is more of a data store, and that is the challenge, right? You're honing in on the challenge. It's like, it is a database, and it stores very relevant and very, vital information, right? About, your job and what you're doing, and key information on the customer and so on. But it doesn't help you do your job more effectively. And that's, I think, where, the workflow comes in, right? How do you improve the business processes? And so that's the gap.
Yeah. I love that.
Something I find interesting about the problem you're articulating, John, is that in this new world of AI, all these companies they're targeting. There's, when companies start up, they go very niche, because they want 1,000 raving fans. And so the pace of development of AI has been so fast that now you have all these new players that want to target very specific personas or use cases, to where, I'm immediately identifying that certain tools that we have, that our sales team acquired, that we have been, using, they're not a fit. They're not as good of a fit for my customer success needs as some of these new players are. And so I think it's going to take another 5 or 10 years, maybe 5 years, considering how fast everything's moving. But for all these players to come up, see who's winning, see who then gets acquired to then have more consolidated platforms where you can actually have one platform. But there's a real like splintering right now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of exciting to me. I actually like it because everything is like, it's so specific and it's so tuned. I mean, we are on the Update AI podcast. And the reason why I found Update AI, I'll plug Josh for a sec, is that, the exactly what you were saying, Sam, it asks the right questions and in the right context that's important to a specific kind of person. And this is the feedback I give to any AI vendor that I evaluate, especially the ones that give you the blinking cursor and they're like, look, chatbot. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what, ask it something first, or ask it a series of questions that you think are important to me first, and then put that on the page so that when I load it, it's ready to go. Like I hate the blinking cursor thing. It's nice to have when you want to think outside the box, but
Right, but these tools are designed to help us get started with things, right? And I think that's the thing, is this generative idea. And Sam, this goes to one of the questions that I have for you about your CSM specifically. How are you like modifying or looking through your organization to make sure that your CSMs are actually working towards center of excellence and not just point solutions, not just, hey, click this button, do this thing here? What are some of the things that you have in place for your leadership team to say, look, this is an indicator that the CSM maybe needs to think differently or is thinking differently, right?
A few things, right, that we have. One, we use Salesloft, so we drink our own champagne.
Yeah,
and so our CSMs are using Salesloft. And so, on a weekly basis, I get a notification of here's all the different activities and what, people are doing, what opportunities they're working on. So that's like a very high level that I can even get a view for. But, the expectations, and this really comes down to the frontline managers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and are the frontline managers, like part of their role is to be listening to the call recordings and actually grading the call recordings and, doing the scorecard. So we have like AI that does a first pass on the call recording score. And then, and then you're supposed to go in, the manager is supposed to go in and review it. And so, and they score them, we call it a give and get scorecard. Like, are they having the right conversations? What are the types of conversations? Did they ask for their own grade? Right? Like, how are they doing? How is Salesloft doing on the call? And then what are the, things that they should be driving towards? So to your point, we're using that as a mechanism to make sure that the CSMs are doing what's expected and driving the right results and outcomes, right? We have expectations around the number of quarterly business reviews you should be doing with a customer and, and the frequency of that, right? And so those are all things that we've, put in place to make sure that we're doing that. I think, again, it goes back to very easy to measure and monitor when you've got like, a book of business of, anywhere like a, $5 million book of business that you have to cover. It could vary, by the CSM, segment that, it's only 5 accounts versus, one or two accounts versus 5 versus 20 and 30. And then you've got your tail end. And so at the tail end, like slightly different things that we look at in terms of, how the CSM is working and reacting to those accounts. And being able to engage and have the right conversation. But that's still, like, I would say, where we're still trying to figure it out, right? Like, we need to get better on the tail end of those customers because they're still important customers, just in its singularity. They're just not a large dollar value, but, how do we balance that, right?
it's so hard because you're dealing with just like kind of pure data at that point. When it's that massive customers, when it's a smaller group, you can pick up the phone and call them and get a sample set, interview some people, get to know them, build trust. We're dealing with the same thing. I mean, a lot of the digital motions are experiment, and kind of see where the data and the clicks and all that stuff takes you.
Hey, everybody, it's Josh. I'm taking a quick break from the podcast to tell you a bit about UpdateAI. I started UpdateAI to solve 2 major challenges for CS teams. The first is that we save CSMs 4 to 5 hours per week with our productivity through AI. Secondly, we give leaders a window into all the conversations across each account and the entire portfolio. So we help knowledge transfer, we help increase the coverage model of your CS teams, and we help you detect emerging patterns in what your customers are telling your CSMs across all the risks, product feedback, advocacy moments, and expansion opportunities. So come check us out at www.updateai. It's completely free to sign up and trial.
I think you had mentioned that you had done some pretty good work with your automating some of your onboarding. I feel like that's utopia for a lot of different companies. What was what were some of the keys to like feeling like you've kind of done it, or that you're really on the right track?
So a few things that we've done. And so, we piloted, so we always had onboarding, but all of our onboarding was human led. Right. And so even if it was webinar based, there were always so we had different levels of onboarding, package levels, but there was always a human component to that. At the lowest end, it was driven by webinars, but the challenge is no one attended the webinars, or even if they attended the webinars, they weren't completing the activities to actually fulfill their onboarding commitment and so on. And so, and at the end of the onboarding, we actually score the customer. So we score them on how, what they've configured in the application, right? So we have a technical score, and then we also have an adoption score that we give them based on, the number of users that log in. So we have a score that we give them, technical and adoption score coming out of onboarding. And it just wasn't high enough. When we looked at the cohort based on like the basic to standard and the different offerings that we had, just very low scores coming out of the onboarding phase. Right, the statistic is there that if the faster you can onboard, the faster they can find value, the higher likelihood they are to renew. And so, that was like definitely a challenge that we had. And of course, our basic customers are typically the ones that don't really get the high touch model, right? They're in the long tail. So how do we fix that? And so last year we started a journey on rethinking how we onboard these basic customers and what would that look like. We still wanted human intervention, but at the right point and the right time, and less talking about, hey, this is how you have to configure Salesloft, but more about like, what's the value? What are the outcomes that you're trying to drive towards, and being able to help them pivot it. And so we made that all automated, the first part of it. So when a customer, becomes a basic onboarding, or becomes a customer and then starts with basic, the admin gets a notification, they start their journey. And so we use a product called Chameleon. So think of it as walking Pendo, kind of walking you through that experience. But we also combine that with Ever After, which is another product that's out there. We tie the two together to really give them an experience around like, hey, this is the first step that you need to do. And then Chameleon kind of walks them through, this is the next step, and we go through that. And then, at the right points, the consultant will engage. They'll see them where they're at in their journey, and they'll see them. We saw a tremendous improvement in our technical and adoption scores coming out of that journey that we now have rolled it out to all basic customers. So we don't do any more webinar format. And what we found was also the amount of time the customer had to spend setting up their instance decreased as a result, because they could spend it, in the moment when they were ready to, versus like having to wait for a webinar or whatever it is. And so that's kind of an example of what we've done with the onboarding program and how we've automated it. So now we're looking at, the other onboardings that we do, the standard and, the more expensive packages, and how can we incorporate some of the, Chameleon and Ever After into that journey for, our larger customers, right? And invoke the right people at the right time, on their onboarding journey.
You mentioned Chameleon, and then, Pendo as well. One of the things that I think you talked about in some of the prep doc is this idea of like the 80-20 rule, right? This is something that anybody who is doing anything with digital understands and is spending a lot of time talking about. Yeah. I would love to hear, okay, so for the listeners, the 80-20 rule is that we want to pivot into an organization where 80% of the tasks are, repeatable, scalable tools that you can use through software or LLMs or any type of thing, so that the human is focused on the 20%, which is the most impactful thing. You're not worried about emails or tasks or follow-ups. It's just, where's the value? So Sam, just for the next, as we kind of start winding down our session here, I would love to hear how you're working with your team to identify the 80-20 and how you're working through how to prescribe maybe AI or LLMs or other automations to take over some of those things. This upscale into, at scale for enterprise is a big thing. It's not just the low ARR accounts anymore, but I just kind of love to hear how you're thinking through that.
A great question. So I'll give another example and then talk about our process and approach in that. So another example, think about all the decks that you create, right? Like QBR decks, customer success plans, right? Very repeatable, right? The data is customized, but like the format and that, and I shouldn't say that the data isn't customized. The insights are customized.
The insights,
the data
yes.
you can pull, right? But like the insights, like so what, right? What are the recommendations that we would make? That's the insight part. So that's the 80-20. So we've actually automated all of so we have templates for, QBRs, customer success plan. We have different templates depending on the segment of customer. And we automate the generation of those decks, so 80% of it is automated. And then the 20% is where the CSM goes in and makes their recommendation, gleans the insights from the data, and to be able to structure and modifies the roadmap based on what we're seeing, right? And so we use a product called Matic.
Big fans of Matic over here. Yeah, we just implemented it.
It's really helped automate for us quite dramatically. So we're now rolling them out to Drift. So we acquired a company in February. They weren't using it, so this will give them some lift as well. Very helpful in productivity in that. But how do we approach, broader AI initiatives or other initiatives that we do? And so we've sent out a survey, actually, quite honestly, to ask like where are areas that we feel that could be automated. Ask the frontline people, like where are areas that they feel we could automate, and then what are the outcomes do we think we will get from that automation, right? So what are ultimately the outcomes that we want to see? And I think that's the most important thing on any technology project that you do, but like, especially AI is like, just like Michael said, there's so many like feature function, lots of companies are coming out. So like ultimately, what's the business outcome, that, has to be rooted in value, right? So what's the value that is generating, and really focusing on that. And then looking at what are the vendors that are out there. So, but first prioritizing, right? Because every department, I have a pretty broad, remit. So every department has different priorities. So prioritizing that and really looking at it. So I actually have an individual that's just focused on what we call customer experience and AI. And so I have an individual. He has now a team underneath him to help us, because like Michael said, there's such a proliferation of technology out there. And what I noticed myself doing, right, kind of got into my own game, is different solutions for different things, right? And then creating this proliferation. And so how does it all integrate? How does it all tie together? And helping us see that vision for the customer org. And what it will look like for us, at the end of this year, and as we go into 2-3 years and that. So that's what we've done.
I love that. Yeah. I know like the whole CS ops thing was a very important thing as our organization started to mature and as our industry started to mature. Yeah. But actually what you just said pops into my head, this idea of customer experience, not just, there's CX from like a consumer side, but also like thinking about like the internal CSMs. We need CSMs for our CSMs to be able to like look at the whole journey and to say, yeah, you guys are using these 10 tools. You're probably not using them right. Right. So we'll give you the point solution of training, but also like, I've been really enjoying this idea of dog fooding, where we're actually using the software ourselves more and more and more. We're actually building more tools for ourselves to make ourselves better, and not just selling something that is going to make our customers' life better. Okay, so
I agree. And when I talk about customer experience, I'm also looking at it from both standpoints. So it's both the external customer experience, right? And what is it that we're trying to drive towards? And that comes with NPS and customer journey mapping and all the things that you think about with customer experience. But then, John, to your point, it's how do we internally support that customer experience? And then where does technology, and more specifically AI, fit, on top of that, right? And some of it could be our own product, Salesloft, and some of it could be other products. And how do we become a more efficient organization that ultimately supports the customer experience that as a company we're trying to drive towards.
I love that. That's great. Awesome. One of the things that I also just kind of like, as we're final questions here, again, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been really encouraging. I love hearing the process in which you not just think about it from solving for your customers, but also like really, really like taking the fact that you're supporting 300 people and these people have like things that they need to get done, and it shouldn't be frustrating. It shouldn't be hard. We should use the tools that we at our disposal to make it good, right?
Yeah.
What is one thing, and this is for you too, Michael, I want to hear your answer. What is one thing that you do for rest? Like, how do you recharge? How do you find those moments where you're not at home or not at work or not sitting in traffic, but what do you do lately to kind of refresh?
So I have two
Sam?
things.
Okay.
So
Go for it.
I am I'm an avid pickleball player. So I love to play pickleball.
Yes,
and
I
when
just
my
started.
That way, hitting a nice wiffle is awesome to let that aggression out. And then, and then exercise, right? So like a big fan of Pilates. And so I go and do Pilates classes. And what's great about like any exercise is you could take it on the road. And so like when I'm on the East Coast, I do solid core classes. And, when I'm, here, on the West Coast, they don't have it. So we do like, Pilates. So like you could pick courses and do that. And so I don't have a gym membership here, but like I do day passes, right. And just do that. So that's how I reset, recharge myself.
I love that. What about you, Michael?
Same boat, except I do the tennis thing. So I'm the annoying tennis player who's like, don't set up your. All the pickleballers are trying to recruit me to play pickleball while we're playing tennis, and I'm like, no knock on pickleball. I think pickleball is fun, but I need like a lot of exercise. I'm like a wound up dog, that needs to be taken
like
out
a golden
and
retriever. Yeah.
Really exhausted. Otherwise, like
otherwise your mind keeps running, right? Like it's just like it keeps running the whole time. And doing that kind of separates it.
Completely. So on Sunday, so I have a 1-year-old daughter. So foundationally, we don't rest that much.
Fair.
It's always on. But on Sunday, my wife is so gracious that she lets me go and play like a long tennis match. And so like that's my favorite, is in the blistering heat, 2 or 3 hours of like exhaustive work, either a very long run or a very long bike ride or a very long tennis session. Nothing makes my mind feel more quiet than like coming inside, stretch, shower, relax after that much exercise in that kind of heat. I feel like you're nirvana, like nothing can bother me at that point.
I love that. Yeah, I've been swimming. So we have a pool, and obviously there's a lot of exercise. But I've also I do a lot of writing. So I've been journaling. I'm on like a mental health journey right now with my therapist, and I'm like every morning I'm writing daily affirmations, and I'm keeping my little journal of like the things that work and the things that don't work. And that on top of my mornings, basically, I'll just go out to the pool in the morning and spend about 20 minutes out there, just kind of like.
Now, are you into cold plunging or just swimming? Because cold plunge seems to be the big thing, and I will not do it. Like,
it's so good.
Yeah.
The only trend that I have followed this year is pickleball. That's it.
Okay.
I did learn how to make. I mean, I was really into the sourdough cooking during the lockdown, so I feel like I might get into the cold plunge, but it's not. It's definitely not something that I'm stoked on. So for me, but also,
it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
I will say. There has been like maybe twice a week, like I will actually let myself take a nap like in the afternoon. Like this, I'm aging myself. Like I turned 42 this year. And if I have time in my schedule, I'll block like a little hour for a little lunch, and I'll just like conk out, and it's pretty darn great. Like, I gotta be honest, waking up at like 4 and then like jumping into a couple more meetings, like refreshed, like it's a bit of a life hack. So
I'm jealous. I can't. I just like, if I try to nap, I can't. Sometimes I will nap like on a weekend and laying on the couch and just fall asleep. But I just like, I don't know, I don't know. I think I get distracted or I'm losing out if I'm napping. So
yeah. Oh no, I'm looking forward to my next nap, guys. That I'm missing out right now because I'm not napping. So
see, I used to do the opposite. I lived in Dallas for a little while, and the outside pool was not heated, and so it was cold. I remember one day looking out, and it was really cold outside, and I was like, I bet you that pool is a cold plunge now. And so I took my meat thermometer and I tested it, and it was like 40 degrees, and I was like, perfect. And so I jumped right in, and then that became my afternoon. So rather than taking a nap, I would go and do like, a few minutes in the cold plunge, and people would like come out of their doors, their apartments, and stare at me like, do you need help? Like, what's going on? Like, what's wrong with you?
no, I'm just
Like,
just
did
a
you
crazy
fall
person
in the pool? I'm like, no, I chose to be in here.
Yeah.
But then calls after that, again, very quiet mind.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Dude, I love that. Well, awesome. Thank you guys so much. This has been such a great conversation. Is there anything else, anything else we want to say before we wrap up? Or
I do want to give one word of wisdom, like on the
oh
AI
my gosh,
side,
please.
It was like a lesson learned for me. Like, as you look at all these vendors that are out there, because there's a proliferation of them, bring your security and legal team in early into the discussions. Don't wait until, like, you typically, when you do vendor selection, right, you go through your rubric and you do that. Then you found a person, and then found the company, and then you go security, legal, bring them in. No. Bring them in like while you're doing the evaluation, because there's so many of them out there, and depending on the level of, I don't want to call it scrutiny, but like your security team and their appetite for risk is probably pretty low, but like get them involved and make sure that that vendor that you're looking at meets the criteria, because I didn't do that, and I learned the lesson wrong very incorrectly, and how to go back through the selection process. So which just elongated the cycle. So take that lesson, bring them in the journey early on, and because a lot of them won't even have a legal team right on their side.
Oh yeah,
then like a third party legal company and all of that. So bring them in early.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Sam. This has been wonderful. Excited, to kind of see where you guys go this year with Salesloft and Drift. You guys, through the acquisition. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you. And
you can call me Josh.
Josh. Okay, Josh. We'll see you again next week. Thank you guys all for listening, and we'll talk again soon. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, John. Bye.
Bye.